Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. It's a gorgeous day, so we do appreciate you being here. My name is Christine Daly, and I actually am on a couple of different committees. A broader committee, which is the Livable Duxbury, making Duxbury livable for all ages, along with quite a few other members as well. And our goal is to try to focus on alternative housing for people of all ages within Duxbury, and make it as affordable as we can. And then myself, Kathy Dowling, and Joanne Moore formed a subcommittee. And this is the first time we've introduced this, but this is Living Duxbury University. So we are trying to put together a curriculum of different programs that are of interest to people in terms of a lot of different programs that cover a lot of what we consider to be a pretty broad area. But if there's things that you think would benefit you, please let us know, because we can introduce those in as well. Excuse me. These are run every 2 weeks. We usually do them on Tuesdays. I think there's one day we had to alter, but 4 to 5. And we're hoping to be able to educate you all on some of the things that are important happening in your life, and that will help you proceed forward and be able to make decisions on important aspects like housing. So today, Alicia Siciliano is here. She is as the owner of Alluring Concepts. Chris Perry is also here as well in the back of the room, and she's going to talk various different aspects of housing and alternatives, maybe on an existing property that you have or within your property. So please welcome Alicia.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
I'm going to get a microphone for you,
Okay.
because I think that's just for Patty.
Yep. I can speak up. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Italian, so I'm loud and I talk a lot with my hands.
I'm sorry.
It's been proven if you hold my hands, I can't speak. My husband did it to me before and I just stopped talking. It was great. So just a little background on myself. I have my master's in interior design. I'm a licensed general contractor and I own Alluring Concepts. And we are a design build firm out of Pembroke. I am a member of the Pembroke Planning Board. I'm on year 6, re-elected. I'm also the delegate on our Old Colony Planning Council, which Duxbury is also part of. And I sit on the Economic Development Committee as the vice chair through Old Colony Planning Council, as a business owner rather than a town planner, just for a different perspective for them. So saying all that, how that helps me with you guys is that I am very entrenched in our community, and I'm not only the business owner, but I also want to help everyone in the community, right? I decided to run for planning board to be a way for me to give back to my community and to get to know more people rather than just somebody out there to make a buck. And now we're going to move on to what we want to talk about today. So one thing that's near and dear to my heart is accessory dwelling units, which has been a hot topic over the last year. Some people are like, well, what's an accessory dwelling unit versus like an in-law apartment? I grew up having my grandmother in my house where she had her own bathroom, living room, but we shared the kitchen, and multi-generational living. And that's something that a lot of our towns had kind of pushed to the side over the last 30 years. So some of you might have grown up having a family member live with you as a child, or you lived with somebody when they were children to help take care of them. We live in one of the most expensive states in the nation. And so it's very expensive for people young and old, to stay in this community, because the taxes alone could push somebody out of their own home that they don't have a mortgage on anymore once they're at an age where they aren't taking in a full income. So how can we help that? And then the state looks at it as, well, every town has put so many restrictions on being able to build in-law apartments and accessory dwelling units that it's unfair to the people in those towns. So some of the things that when they made the housing bond bill that came into fruition last August, which became active as of February 2nd into law, that every town has to abide by it, whether they had something on the books for in-law apartments or accessory dwelling units with restrictions, it now has to fit into into the state regulations, which those are where it used to an in-law apartment. They could say you could have one, it had to be within the primary dwelling. You couldn't have it detached, right? So if you had a garage with a second story over it, you couldn't put an apartment in there because it wasn't attached to the house. Or they'd say some towns just outright didn't allow them. Weymouth didn't allow them at all, which was always strange to me since they're I always think of them more of a city, and they didn't allow in-law apartments. The other part of in-law apartments that the state wanted to remove is the deed restrictions, because most towns would put deed restrictions in there saying you had to rent to family only. Family member has to live in the house. Any of those things where now that has all been taken away from the towns, so they can't put unrealistic regulations in there. In addition, even when these new regulations came out, they gave basically every town about 6 months to come up with their new bylaws, but we're realizing they were getting bylaws that were adding too many restrictions in again, which was basically trying to circumvent what the state was trying to do, was make more housing for our young and our old, to make affordable housing. So the state has said, nope, you can't do this and you can't do that. So it's great for anybody that has the means to be able to do this. So anyone that already has an in-law apartment that maybe wasn't utilizing it that way because they weren't allowed to have a stove, or they had the trick of we're putting the stove in as soon as the building inspector walks out the door. Now you could basically put that back in, get the deed restriction removed, and now have a legal apartment, which is going to help somebody for insurance, be able to rent at a higher rate and be able to make yourself some income. So this might be something where our elderly wants to live in, or that, and now you're allowed to rent out your own home. So maybe you want to live in the 900 square feet and you have 2,000 square feet that you're already living in, and you can put on the addition and you can live in there, and now you could bring in an income from that house. Because what is an average rate in Duxbury right now for rent for like 2,000 square feet? Anyone know?
It's like $4,500. Yeah.
That's a pretty good income for the month, $4,500. So sometimes it's thinking outside of the box, how we can all stay in our homes long term, or create, you have a lot of stairs. Can we do an accessory dwelling unit where somebody doesn't have to go up and down the stairs? Or is it that accessory dwelling unit means that college kid that just graduated can come live there and pay for the ADU, which is going to help you cover your taxes and expenses for your own home so everyone can stay long term. So the state has now made that a real mission for them to get in there and help people be able to build these ADUs. So some of the main things are that you're allowed up to 900 square feet for an accessory dwelling unit, or 50% of the square footage of the main house. So that, or the main dwelling. So if your house is 1,500 square feet, you could only do an accessory dwelling unit for 750 square feet. So it's whichever is smaller is where that's the maximum you can be at, but the most is 900 square feet statewide. And some of the things where people are like, well, can I do it? Can I not? As long as we can fit it on your lot and you don't go outside of any zoning bylaws for your town. So Duxbury has like a 15% lot coverage. So we can't exceed that 15% lot coverage. But if you think about it, it's 40,000 square feet for a conforming lot in Duxbury. So your 15% is still a good amount of space that you can put in there.
And it's, so 40,000 square feet times 15% is 6,000 square feet. That's the footprint that your house takes up. It doesn't mean your house is 6,000 square feet. So when you take a look at a lot of the housing footprint, and footprint isn't, you look at your foundation, and if you have a 3,000 square foot house and it's a colonial, you're probably using 1,500. So it's 3,000 divided by 2, because your footprint is 1,500, your first floor is 1,500, your second floor is 1,500, and that makes up 3,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of other things you need to consider as far as coverage, and that's like decks are considered coverage.
Anything with a roof?
Anything that's not porous. So if you have a rock driveway, it's not covered, but if you have a paved driveway, it's coverage. So there's some other things to take into consideration, but that gives you an example of how, simple the coverage can be. And there's ways to look up on the town website. If you look up your property field card, each dwelling has a footprint of how the town comes up with your square footage. So if you ever need any help figuring that out, that's a good place to start, is going to the town of Duxbury website under the field card or property information card.
I can help you out.
On the assessors. Thank you. Yeah, the assessors.
The assessors always has your field card on there and what they consider for square footage. So there's a lot of ways to calculate that out. Some of us don't have large homes, but like how can we fit that in, convert a space? One of the easy conversions are like raised ranches, easy to separate dwellings. There's all kinds of tips and tricks that I can make in designs where we can maximize that. I'm doing one right now where it's a small ranch and you wanted to put a basement apartment in. So to get that basement apartment in, we're a little short. It's a ranch. It was small. So how am I going to get a little extra square footage? But he had a covered porch that we've now made that covered porch actually part of the living space. So now you come in the front door and you have a door to go into his unit and a door and stairs to go down to the basement. And down in the basement, he has a small storage area still, and then a door now to go into the unit. And we've added some really big egress windows in there. It almost feels like crazy because the windows are so large, but now that's a great space with some nice egress out of there. And long term, he's hoping to have somebody live down there that can take care of him long term, a family member. But that way we're able to get it in. And the state has all different ways. The state is very clear on protecting this use for us as townspeople, that we're a town, can't get too restricted on us. So they've spelled everything out in that January edition of guidelines to restrict the towns. So towns couldn't make up their own way of how to calculate the square footage. The state says that you can count space, anything finished. So if you have finished attic space, anything above 5 feet in height in an attic will be counted towards the square footage of that home, even though the town doesn't consider that square footage. The state does. So the state is calling out what the square footage of your home is. So any loft space that has 5 feet or higher in it can be considered part of that square footage as living square footage, and basement can be counted as that. So a lot of towns for raised ranches, for example, only count the upper story. So they're getting taxed on 1,000 square feet, but the state's now saying, no, that basement counts towards square footage as well. Because we all know people live down there and use that space. So the state's saying that counts. So now they have 2,000 square feet. So in the end, though, for that raised ranch, I got to do some funny calculations in how I can make it work that we're still having the primary dwelling is still 2 times as large as the base of that apartment. But there's always ways we can make it work. Anybody have any questions yet? I'm happy to answer questions because I know I talk fast sometimes. So anything not clear, please feel free to ask. Okay. One of our concerns, though, in these where it gets a little tricky is our septic systems, right? If we lived in a town with town sewer, makes it a lot easier, but we don't have town sewer. We have septics. So we have to, the state has guidelines on that. DEP states what those are. So if you pass Title V for your septic system, and it has enough bedrooms and it's designed properly for an ADU and the amount of bedrooms, then it's not a problem. So if you're carving space out of your house, an existing space, we can potentially make the existing septic work as long as it passes Title V. And sometimes we might have to put in a second tank, but could use the same leaching field if we have the same amount of bedrooms. So there's different ways that we can maneuver it. But if your septic system doesn't pass Title V, they're going to make you upgrade the septic system. So that scares a lot of people, but that can be anywhere from, if we just have to add a tank and the leaching field's good for the amount of bedrooms that you have, means about $10,000. Versus if you have to do like a whole new septic system, could be 20. If you need a hydrogen system, you're at 30. It can be done, but if you're doing this renovation to add this space, it's well worth it for now and in the future. Because if you go to sell the house, you're not going to pass Title V either if you can't pass the Title V.
If you're maxed out for room count, you can add an additional tank to increase the volume.
As long you can either add a whole separate system for the ADU, a 1-bedroom system, or a separate tank if the leaching field is
We'll support it.
adequate. Which we have had one design where we did add to the leaching field because it was designed in the way that it could be expanded if needed. So we just were able to add a second tank that then goes to the same leaching field. Another one where we just changed out the tank because the tank and leaching field were designed for a 3-bedroom. We still only had 3 bedrooms, but the town of Pembroke wants a dual chamber tank. So that way each side has its own coming into. So it kind of separates things out a lot better. So we were able to change out that tank for about $8,000 to $10,000. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're able to rent that space out, even if it's the 1-bedroom apartment, they're going for like $2,000, $3,000, depending on how much space it has. So you make that back in 3 months. And now you have that rent going forward. There's also some state programs for seniors. Right now, there is one for a $50,000 loan. It has 0% financing, no payments until you sell the residence or you die. Right? So like it's free money as long as you can prove the rest of the money you have to build the ADU or do the renovation. So you can find it on mass.gov under ADUs. It's a little link, says, programs like this. You can just click on it and it brings you and you can start filling out the information. But it's a $50,000 grant from the state, basically, that has no penalties, no interest, no repayment until you sell the house. So it's a nice way where you can maybe take out a little equity to build one of these. But at the same time, now you can get that $50,000 where that gives you a good amount to get started on a renovation like this. There are also other ways that now with the flexibility of these programs is maybe every person's design doesn't have to be the same either, right? Because you might want it in your basement. Somebody else wants it to convert their garage because they want to move in there and rent out the main house, whatever it may be. Or it's that you want to bring in a family member and you want to give them their own space, living room, but maybe you share the kitchen and give them their own bathroom. We've done conversions like that as well, where we can help people stay in their homes. That's the ultimate goal is for all of us to stay where we want to stay, not have to go because of financial means, right? With the growing cost of taxes and home insurance and all those lovely things. And stairs, right? Those are evil sometimes. Right. I can't wait to move, so I don't have any more stairs. So I'm with us on that one. Any questions on any of this so far? Yes.
Of the work that you've done, how many of your designs include a shared kitchen? Is that like the majority of
It's been less normal.
Okay.
Then most of them want their own space so they can close the door. We've done a lot of, when they're connected to the house, we've done some where I call them the hotel doors, where you have a lock and 2 doors. So the other person could open it and the other person doesn't. You don't have to let them in if they're family, right? Because sometimes we all need space from our loved ones. So that's more popular than a shared kitchen, but we literally just finished one where we converted an entire first floor so grandfather could move in, see his kids. He just retired and wants to see his grandkids grow up. And so he moved from New Hampshire back to Massachusetts so he could watch them grow. And we were able to reconfigure a bedroom and a couple bathrooms and a kitchen to give him a great space where he has his privacy and he has his own kitchen. His own bathroom, living room, and bedroom. And then a hallway that brings to the kitchen. So there's always some ways that I'm always willing to figure it out for people. Yes?
I'm particularly interested in creating accessible spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I know decades ago there was a group in Boston called Adaptive Environments, and they are no longer. So what's what resources are available for that type of design?
So I know there's a couple small programs. That same grant program falls under if you needed to make your space accessible for something, you can use that same money towards that if you didn't want to do an accessory dwelling unit. So that $50,000 grant is helping people stay in their homes. You just can't use it for, I'm trying to remember, it's roofing and windows are the only two renovations that they don't want you to use the money for. Unless you were building an accessory dwelling unit, then they're fine with it. But you can't take the money out just to do that. But if you needed to renovate your bathroom, say to make it more accessible, you could use that $50,000 for that from that program. So it's worth always checking into. I mean, and somebody like myself, I help people figure out those spaces to get them accessible. So like I'm always welcome to, you guys can always call me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Come out, take a look, see if we can come up with a plan to make the space safe for you to grow old in, right? Because that's ultimately, we don't want to fall, we don't want to trip. And over time, we all get too much furniture in spaces, right? We have trouble letting them go. So how can we redesign that space to keep those things and to make it accessible? My contact information. I have some cards and stuff up here on the table. You guys are all welcome to take it. I have some skinny can koozies if anybody wants them. And I call them rubber husbands, jar openers. Always gets the ladies to stop at the trade shows. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
They don't talk back.
But all my information's up there. I have a team of carpenters that work for me that are great. My husband works for me. He used to work for the Department of Corrections. He does say I'm meaner than the inmates. But that's okay. He works. We have a great time and we love what we do. And to me, I love being able to help people stay in their home. For me, myself, the last couple of years, my father passed last year and he went in and had knee replacement and never walked again. So for 2 years, it was fast and furious because he couldn't get the walker in their bathroom. And so now we can't use the bathroom. So fast and furious, how can I fit him in a handicap accessible bathroom as fast as possible? And was able to get that done for him. Okay, now the next thing is there's an old antique house. I have a tripping hazard going from one room to another. So I'm adding small ramps and transforming that house in a very quick and short amount of time to make it accessible for him. And I remember as a child where my grandmother lived with us and it was a long route for her to get to the bathroom. And so I remember it like clear as day when I was probably 5th grade where we cut the opening in the bathroom. We got rid of a vanity so my grandmother didn't have to go out and around to get to the bathroom. So to me, this is all, it's part of my upbringing and I feel like it's so important. And for years, I've been trying to plan a development for multi-generational living. So the big house with the, in-law apartment, which now ADUs are legal, so it makes my development future a lot easier. But I'm always here to help people to stay in our homes. It's the thing we spend the most time in and the most money on in our lives. And as we're getting older, you don't want to give up that space that you love. You want to spend, you have your memories there and you want to hold on to them. So to leave there, it stinks. So how can we make it affordable for you to stay?
Are you finding more people are having a detached unit or attached to their home? Are you seeing any trends?
I'd say it's a 50-50. The detached came really quickly, I found, for some of my clients, because we had some that had been denied by town zonings before because they weren't attached. So our older homes have detached carriage houses a lot. And those carriage houses aren't attached to the house. So they won't let you put an in-law in it, which is silly. So now, as of February 2nd, that was legal. So a couple of my clients who had been denied over the last 5 years, we quickly put those in and started them and completed them early in the springtime. And they're already using the spaces because we already had the design. We had everything done except for the approval from the town. So now they couldn't deny us anymore. So it was great to be able to get those move forward for people. But I think it all depends on how somebody wants the space, if they're going to live in it or they're not going to live in it.
And how long from inception to completion does something, an ADU or changing that living space in your house take?
It really depends on how much we need to do to make it there. So if we have to fully gut an area or we're fully building an area, two different animals. Sometimes doing a renovation can take longer than doing the new construction. Or if we're doing a small addition or converting a small area into the house, that can be faster than renovating the whole space. Because most of us are going to be living in part of the space. So it's a little bit slower of a process for the builder, for the team to put things together because we're trying to be courteous to the people living there. And new construction, if we're just building it, we can do that a lot faster. We come up with ways where we don't have to do a foundation, where we use like helical piles, for example, which are like our wine corkscrews that just go into the soil. So we don't have to dig for a foundation. They just disturb 9 inches of soil. They go down below the frost line. And now we can start building on those like today, as soon as they're done. We did like 29 before 1 o'clock one day and started framing after lunch. They can, they don't have to.
They can.
But you don't have to have one. So if we're able to do it without having to do a basement, concrete is silly expensive.
No, but
it gets expensive. It's the same price as wood flooring, for Pete's sake. Yes.
With the detached garage you're speaking of, and now since February 2nd, you can do whatever you want with that inside. Is there a limit? Could you make that a ADU, or you can do whatever you want with it?
You can do whatever you want. Like, so obviously permitted, and it has to fit into the town bylaw, but you can absolutely, as long as your septic can handle that, or adding the septic, like we said, but you could convert a garage to an accessory dwelling unit if you didn't want it to be the garage anymore, or above the garage, turn that family room of the garage into an accessory dwelling unit. Sometimes if you're going over the garage, one of the things that gets a little tricky sometimes, depending on the lot, is fitting in the stairs, whether they're inside the garage or outside the garage. But you could convert a garage easily into an accessory dwelling unit, the first floor. We did a barn conversion recently. It was an old barn with a big giant sliding door. We added an office space for the primary dwelling on one side, and then that one was 750 square feet, where we added a nice little entryway with glass doors, but kept the original barn door where it locks to the side. But if there was a bad storm, you could cover it up and cover up the French doors that we put in. So it still looks the same, and it still has that charm that the house always has had. But now there's these glass doors that go into a little vestibule, and then there's the door going into the unit. So nice 1-bedroom apartment for them. And that was for a client whose father moved from Connecticut back here to be with them, where we tried it 3 years ago and it was denied by the town of Hanover.
So if you build on the upper level of a garage,
Mm-hmm.
how practical is it to install an elevator?
Elevators aren't hard to put in as long as there's the space. Because we can basically take up about 4 feet by 4 feet is all we need to do it. So it just comes down to money. It's about, depending on the quality of how big and how often it's going to be used, can be about $20,000 to $30,000. But if it's cost effective for you, they're pretty easy to put in. It's just another mechanical device. Yes?
To get around the stairs in your house,
Mhm.
your bedrooms are upstairs, and say you have a living room
Mhm.
as well as a family room, is it disadvantageous to make the living room a bedroom for future sale? Would you have to convert it back to like a living area? If you'd have to put closets in, and say you took an office and made that a primary bathroom with it. Is that like a negative thing to do in your house, is what I'm saying?
Well, if you're planning on staying long term, I don't think it is. There's a lot of people looking for first floor living. It's just, and there's always ways that we can do it where it's not totally destroying some space if you ever needed to turn it back. But it comes down to, if you're staying in the space, then you have to accept that you're going to do that. But it always can be done. We've done it a lot. I've taken them out and put them in. So everybody's different on what they want, like nine times out of 10, I feel like I'm taking out everybody's bathtubs in their houses, and they all want walk-in showers. And then every once in a while I get somebody who's like, my house doesn't have a tub. I'm like, oh, yes, we're putting in a tub. I get excited because everybody wants them out. So I feel like that's one of those where a realtor is going to tell you what's going to be the best, but I can help you make sure it works for you to work in the space, because those stairs can be tough, right? We all know it. I broke my ankle 3 times in 1 year and had ankle reconstruction. So for a year, those stairs were killing me, and I have a full flight in the house and then another flight up. I haven't done laundry now though ever since. No fun.
That's a tough bone.
No.
Yeah.
So finding ways to get rid of those stairs, I'm always here for you.
I was just going to add something with regards, you were talking about a basement. So Alicia was saying there's ways to get around pouring a foundation. Obviously, if you pour a foundation, that's going to be your most expensive avenue. But like she said, there's like diamond bits and stuff you can put in the ground, right? Which eliminate a foundation altogether. You're not going to have a basement. But then there's crawl spaces. So I think they're 4 feet, right? For crawl, if you do it a crawl space, no.
We don't even have to do that.
Right. But I was just saying, like, if somebody really wants a basement, I have heard of something in town where if you're going to pour a full basement, it cannot be more than 6 feet 8 inches. Because if you pour that height of a basement or more than that height, you could potentially finish that space and it could be living space. 6'8" and below is not to code. So if you do pour a full foundation for a basement, they won't let you go over 6'8", or they'll consider that They'll consider that as part of the 900 square feet. Just a piece of.
So some towns aren't looking at it like that, and some towns are.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. But it is best, to not do that basement. It makes it a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
To not have that basement stairs. We can do it with the way that utilities are now. To do a heat pump system, we can do it ducted, so you don't have to have the mini splits on the wall, because everybody hates them. They work great, but they look ugly, right? But we can do a system like that in a closet, in a tankless hot water heater, and it takes up this, put your washer and dryer right next to it. You're good to, and so you didn't take up a lot of space for those utilities in that ADU. Or if you're doing it attached to your house, you can put those utilities where it's attaching to the house in the main house. If you have to go outside of the unit to get to them, then it's not part of that 900 square feet. The state has also said how to measure your 900 square feet. So just as it's the inside of the walls of that unit, not the outside. And it's any shared walls. It's the middle line of those shared walls counts towards that unit or towards the main house. So you just need somebody creative like myself where I can play the numbers. So what Christina just said about basements is one of my clients, their basement, they had a beam in the basement that didn't meet code, which code is 6 feet 8 inches you need for livable ceiling height, which most of our homes are 7 and 7.5 in that range in New England. So this beam was in the way. It's a steel beam. So what we did is cut the beam and cut all the joists and pushed it up into the ceiling and we didn't do the whole space. The other side where we put a bedroom, we buried that in the wall, just enough to have the doorway be clear of it and the main space. So we're able to take a space that most people would have looked at and said it's not going to work. But we were able to take the existing steel beam, cut it with the welder, cut back the joists, some temporary walls. We supported everything properly, and then push it up. So we gained back 9 inches. So now we're able to give him that apartment in his basement. So that one, in the end, I know everyone was like, well, how much is this going to cost me? So for that renovation that we did for him, we needed to put a whole new septic in as well. He didn't pass Title V. He was like, what do you mean you have to pump your septic tank? So you open the lid and it was full. That renovation, to do his basement, a lot of concrete cutting to put in full-size windows and means of egress. And we did add on, that was a house where we took in his front porch as part of the house. So there's some renovation to the main house. But in the end, I'd say his unit for what we did, we're at about $190,000 with the new septic system for his new apartment. I do know some of the local, my husband and I like to do recon on the weekends. It's just fun for me. So I pretend I'm like a normal person and I go to open houses. So there was a local builder that was doing an open house for ADUs. And so I walk through and he makes a great space and he can modify them. They're all independent living. He doesn't do anything where if you're not building a new one freestanding, that's not for him. You need somebody like me that's willing to come in and to renovate your space. But he was at about $550 per square foot. Ooh. I was like, oh, yeah. And then I was speaking with, at another ADU board talk that I was doing. And another gentleman that does modular ADUs as well. They take about a year from beginning to end to do the modular ones because all the back and forth, and then it goes up fast, right? Because it shows up, but it takes a lot of planning. And then once it gets there, they still have to hook up all your utilities and pour your foundation beforehand and all that kind of stuff. And he was at about $450 a square foot. So I tend to be a lot less than that. I don't think I've ever cost anybody that much per square foot, but our building costs are expensive. We are in one of the most expensive areas. So it's how can we get these affordable for you and finding ways to make it work, or any of those renovations to stay in your house.
Alicia, can you go over the process from like start to end in terms of like site review work, taking trees down, getting a water line in, like those kind of things? Like if someone was interested in building a separate ADU, or even if it's attached, right? You're going to have some site work, and then you're going to and you can start from beginning to end,
right,
and offer that one-stop shopping.
Yes. So whether it's myself or someone else, we can, to figure out what you have is a phone call where I can start doing the research. So there's great services out there like our town's assessor. We can pull it up and see what the town looks at that you have for square footage, what your footprint is. Then I also go on to the Massachusetts GIS, which is the maps for the state, where I can zoom in. Each town has links to them, but then the state has it where I can measure. So I go on and I start measuring. I use a CAD program, a computer-aided drafting. So I can go on really quickly. I draw and figure out what you have for a lot size. Sometimes I even go on Registry of Deeds if I need to look up what a dimension is, because it's not clear from between the assessor's map and the state GIS. So I can tell you, okay, if we wanted to do a freestanding one, where this is where I think it would fit the best. And then the next thing is okay, how can we get utilities there? What utilities are they gonna be? What do you need to get there? Do you have gas on your property? Nice thing about an ADU too is that you don't fall under the stretch energy code if you stay in that 900 square feet.
Ooh.
Which is key because stretch energy code stinks. It's great for our environment, not so great for your wallet, because it asks for a lot more things, like higher R values, heat pumps only, things like that, no gas. But we can then start figuring out what you're going to need. So there are sometimes things that we have to upgrade on your electrical to know that. So that's where we would, after that initial phone call, I'd look up your property, look up what some of your setbacks are, look at your overall before we'd meet with you. So coming out to your house to then we'd walk through the process and see what we need to do for your space. What makes sense? Do we want it attached? Do you want it detached? And that's all a conversation in that initial phone call where we can start working on that to see what it's going to be. Because every town has their little nuances, or every neighborhood sometimes, because you might have an HOA, various restraints that are in there. And if you want attached, detached, in your basement, on the garage, all of them are allowed. It's just how can we fit it into your space and how much space can we give that? And so it's kind of like a math equation, and I was a math geek. So I look forward to them and I want to make everything fit for somebody. And how can I make it fit for your needs and the property's needs, the town's needs, and make sure everybody, it can fit under your budget, because that's also something that's important to me, is making sure everybody can get what they need and finding ways to get it. So whether we need to get gas to it or not, I had one in Norwell where we had to, it was 300 feet away from the main house. So a big expense on that one was getting the water to it. But we found the homeowner knew, oh, I have an old well. So we went through the process for her. I know a well person, bring in the well guy. We can't find it at first. It took us a couple times before we found it. We had to bring in an electrician that had some crazy thing to find it under the ground. And we were able to find it. So now we didn't have to get that water from the street 300 feet back to the ADU that we're building for them in the back. We saved a ton of money because now we didn't have to bring that out to it. Yeah. And so now that well was in great shape, clean water, didn't need to be fracked or anything, just needs a new pump. So we were able to hook it up to that.
You brought up HOAs, associations.
Mhm.
If you live in one of those, do they have any say in putting in an ADU? Provided, of course, you have enough land?
It really depends on the HOA and how they're written. I'm sure a lawyer could tell you whether they have the right to say you can't. If you have an HOA for independent homes, a lot of them say you're allowed to add, but you have to go through the board to get the approval. Like you can add a shed or something like that. Most of them never thought anybody was going to add an accessory dwelling unit. I know some HOAs for developments sometimes will have like a bedroom restriction because that was what the town gave them for a restriction. But from what I've been told from the housing department for the state is that they cannot, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but they can't restrict you from a protected use. So even though the town said we don't want more than this amount of bedrooms, because but you have a septic system that's big enough or town sewer or whatever to accommodate it, they can't stop you in that respect because now you're adding on a protected use. And that's one of the things that the state did that I don't regularly hear the state do, is they called it accessory dwelling unit are by right in a protected use. So it's protected.
I would think that preempt any individual contract. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you could just have every neighborhood just say, you know, and try to exempt themselves out of the state law.
Exactly. And that's why the state was very clear on all of those things, because they want people to be able to do this so you can stay in our houses. Because let's face it, it's expensive to go to a nursing home, right? Or an assisted living. And so if we can help people stay in their homes long term, that's the ideal way to go. I mean, my mother-in-law is now in a nursing home. And the first month and a half, our first bill was $32,000 while we're waiting for her Mass Health to kick in. She didn't have anything to give to the state. But $32,000 for a month, like that's crazy. So that $32,000, wouldn't you rather put it into a space that you can stay in your home and bring in a family member that can take care of you, or, you know, or downsize yourself and put yourself in the ADU, even though it's still your home and you're still at a place where we feel is home.
You have to drain everything down to 2,000 to get on that house.
Right. But this way too, you can sell the house to a family member and build the ADU, or build the ADU and deed it or put it in a living trust to the family member or whatever, and have a family member living in the house and then, or rent it. You know, so like I said, the rent can help pay for the whole thing and where we get to stay and be comfortable. Yes?
So I understand the whole concept. I'm thinking of the way people are going to use this, and I think of Airbnb.
Can you repeat the questions? I can't.
Yep. She said she's thinking of how people are going to abuse it. So that was the one restriction the state allowed, is restriction on short-term rentals. So every town could make their decision themselves whether they're going to allow short-term rentals. I know Duxbury has said no short-term rentals. So that means 31 days or less is not allowed for short. So you're not allowed to Airbnb it. But you don't have, but a homeowner can rent out the primary residence and the ADU. So they don't have to live there if they build it either. So they can go to live with somebody else and rent out both separately. You can't ever subdivide it though, or make it a condo or anything like that if you built the ADU, which I don't, some real estate investors are always looking for that angle, and you can't do that. They have to stay together as part of the same dwelling and can't be separated. They're like a two-family, not to be separated.
So if you built an ADU, say for a family member, and deeded it, but then down the road sold the primary home,
They would have to leave.
Mm-hmm. You can't separate them.
Yeah, you can't separate them. They have to stay together. So it's just like so it's not like a two-family where you could try to sell it and be like, I have a renter, that kind of thing. I mean, you could always try that. I just don't think that would ever fly with people.
No.
Most often, I owned a two-family as my first house, and I was trying to keep the tenants in there when I was trying to sell it, and that wasn't working because people just don't want it. They want a house so they can use the in-law or the other unit. So
It's still one plot of land.
Mhm.
So you can't, it's not separated. It's just two houses on one piece of land.
any other questions? Yes.
Alicia, I don't have a question, but we've been doing housing work under the umbrella of the livable Duxbury for about a year and a half, and I would tell you, I know far too much about housing than I ever thought that I would ever know in terms of setbacks and whatever. But the one thing that, and I'm not related to Alicia at all, but what I've learned is you can't do this on your own. Even if you know the law, even if you know all of the regulations, you really need someone who has an eye for design, certainly, and how to use the space, and some experience. That's very, very clear. I'm just grateful that Christine is on the committee and can answer all the questions. But I really, if you're thinking about doing this, I would highly recommend that you seek somebody out like Alicia first, even before you go to get an engineer or anything like that from the town.
Thank you. I definitely agree, because there's so many, every property is different. So what might say for your house, the first step might be, we need a site plan ASAP. Like, we need to know exactly how much room we have because we want to do it detached. Or somebody else's house that's like, no, I want it in we're going to convert my garage or convert my basement. So everyone's going to have a different traffic pattern of what their path to getting an ADU. So it's important to talk to somebody that knows enough about ADUs to get you there. Because the worst thing could be that, oh, somebody told you to get the site plan first. You get the site plan, and then next thing you know, you do up these great designs, and then you come in and they're like, oh no, you don't have the right septic. So somebody that can look at all of the things, because I think it was somebody in the masterminds group that had planned out an ADU for their down on the Cape. And then in the end, they were like, no, you can't do that. Your septic system, you can't add another bedroom.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. They needed the newer septic systems, the
The hydro, the down the Cape.
down the Cape
It's-
where there's a
yeah.
lot of sand. They have a different septic system now that's being enforced down there, and it's a lot of money. So where our septic systems are around here on average, like I said, new tank 10 to 30, there you're talking 30 to 60. It's what was nitrogen? Sorry.
Yeah,
It's nitrogen. It's just a different way that it evaporates and so it doesn't so quickly go through the soil, because that sandy soil, it just dissipates a little too fast. So they're using these new, and it's just so expensive, and it takes up more land space than what ours do. So if I thought anybody was in a worry for that, I have the engineer contacts where I'm like, hey, look at this. What do you think? Are we going to need to upgrade on this one? Or I'm looking at, one of the first things I'll do is I'll call the Board of Health and find out what your septic system is. They'll send me a copy of it. I can read through that. I know if it says you have a cinder block tank, that's not going to be any good. We're going to need a new septic. That's not going to pass Title V. Or is your septic, you haven't had it tested for Title V? I'll be like, hey, before we know about your septic and we can figure out these numbers, because that might be, you might have, say, $150,000 to do this renovation, but now we're going to need a new septic. All right, well, let's find that out really quickly. And so we can do a Title V test for about $500 to $600. And then if we pass Title V, we know what you have. We know what we have to do from there on. So everyone's space is a little bit different because everyone's property is different and their needs are different. So to get somebody that knows what your path should go, every time it's going to be different. Every time. I don't think I've had two that have gone the same way. And every town has a different way about them and what they're asking for.
Yeah, because if you start going down the engineer route in the plans, that's going to cost you thousands of dollars, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, and then you're going backwards. But if you start with Alicia, then at least you're moving forward with a minimal cost and before you get into these higher priced items that will determine other things.
Right.
So
I do help people a lot on that first phase so we can get to the nitty gritty and then spend the money, right? So keep the cost low before we have to spend a lot. Because the reason we want to do it is to save money, right? So no, we don't want to waste anyone's money. So I'm always here if anybody wants to give me a call or call our office where I can, or text us and we can look up your address and I can give you some thoughts or a quick phone call. I'm happy to talk to anybody and answer any questions. Like I said, I want us all to be able to stay where we want to stay long term, not to be stuck where we get stuck.
thank you. I'll just say 2 words.
Thank you very much.